Hello there once again and welcome to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers. Glad you're with us. We're here every week meeting interesting people and dealing with topical issues. We welcome in a gentleman back for his fourth appearance on The Verdict.
Yes, the Honorable Scott Pruitt, the new Attorney General of the state of Oklahoma, has agreed to join us in the middle of a very busy schedule that I know he has. And we're really pleased he'll come back and tell us what's going on in the office, how he's getting acclimated, how he's getting up and running. He was very kind to give us his time during the campaign and was very open and candid, and we appreciate that. And we're interested now in how, now that he's won, how's it going with him?
Oklahoma's new Attorney General, Scott Pruitt, today's guest on The Verdict. We'll be right back.
Natural gas is the gateway to a better world of energy. Instead of waiting, natural gas moves us forward now. Instead of finding ways to make dirty energy cleaner, natural gas simply is cleaner. We can use it to create our own energy, a wealth of new jobs, and keep more money here at home. Learn more at chk.com. Chesapeake, America's champion of natural gas.
Wilsey, Meyer, Eatman, Tate. We're accountants. We do taxes, business valuations, estate planning, and consulting. And we're right here in Oklahoma, working with the owners of small and medium-sized businesses. Steve Wilsey and Stuart Meyer have the resources and the experience. Wilsey, Meyer, Eatman, Tate in Oklahoma City and Tulsa.
There's no waiting at the St. Anthony ER.
No waiting.
Announcing the end of ER waiting at St. Anthony Hospital. Go to saintsok.com and reserve your time online.
Why didn't we think of that?
And welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers, and Kent's going to introduce today's guest.
Today we're really pleased to have back for his fourth appearance on The Verdict, the Honorable Scott Pruitt, the Attorney General of the state of Oklahoma. Scott was kind during the campaign to come on and tell you viewers about why he should be elected and what his views were, and you listened, and obviously, and elected him by a nice wide margin. A little bit of Scott's background. He did his undergraduate work at the University of Kentucky, where he was a baseball player. He did his law work, working his way through the University of Tulsa. After graduating from the University of Tulsa Law School, he engaged in private practice, where he specialized in constitutional law. He was elected to the state Senate in 1998 and served there 8 years. From 2002 to 2010, he served as co-owner and managing partner of the Oklahoma Redhawks here in Oklahoma City. And in 2010, you folks elected Scott your Attorney General, and he's here today to tell us about what he's been doing in this short time since he took office. Scott, thanks for giving us your time.
Thanks, Ken. Good to see you, Mayor.
Congratulations. I've not talked to you since the election. You must have been pleased with the victory. Was it what your campaign team had told you to expect?
You know, it's hard to, when you go into election day, it's always very difficult to have, at least for me anyway, any kind of feel for exactly what's going to happen, but we were very pleased, very thankful. Felt like that the folks on the campaign trail saw what was going on nationally with the issues in Washington. They saw other attorneys general in other states responding. So I think they saw the office during this election cycle as more than just law and order, the chief law enforcement officer of the state of Oklahoma, which is a very important role of our office. They saw it as something more relevant to them as it relates to health care and some of these environmental protection issues that we're faced with. So I think that translated to wonderful support. Again, very humbled and thankful for the opportunity, and we've been getting ready and obviously sworn in the 10th, and we're hitting the ground running.
Now, you've been an elected official for many, many years. Nonetheless, I think a candidate learns something through the process of running for the office. What did you learn through the campaign that you think is going to help you as the Attorney General?
Well, I think that folks are very passionate today. They're very interested for those that are serving in leadership positions in Oklahoma, one, to lead. They really want folks to act on their convictions. They want the campaign trail to translate to governance as far as decisions are being made at the state level. And we're acting on that. Within 2 weeks after being sworn in, we obviously filed our, and we're going to talk about that later, our action in the Eastern District of Oklahoma challenging Obamacare, the health care law. So I think they want to see a translation of what we've campaigned on to leadership, and it's very important, I think, that they see that across the board.
I know you haven't had much time to get acclimated, but how's it going? Are you enjoying what you're doing? Do you get up in the morning and look forward to going
Absolutely.
to the office?
It's been a great transition. First, I mean, Drew's office, and Drew specifically, Attorney General Edmondson, did a great job in the transition. They're very professional. We had actually a transition office inside the AG's office starting December 1st. We worked very closely together. The cooperation was outstanding. That helped us, I think, after the 10th. To hit the ground running, to be very effective on the various issues we're confronted with. So it's been great. We're actually, the personnel process review began before the 10th. I've had a chance to spend time with each of the unit chiefs in the office. We've got some talented attorneys and excited about learning more from them. So it's been a great transition, and I think a good transition after the 10th as well.
What are the staffing issues that a new Attorney General faces? Is it, you see in some political situations, everybody turns in their resignation, and then, of course, all those have to be reviewed. What's the situation in your office?
Well, that's really what happened in '94 when Attorney General Edmondson was elected. He went to each of the senior staff as well as the attorneys in the office and said, hey, if you want to reapply, and they go through a review process. We're going to have the National Association of Attorneys General come in actually late in the month of February to do a management review process for us to look at structural issues, the number of units we have, whether there should be consolidation in some of those units, whether they're actually performing the roles that they're set up to perform, the vision, the mission of each of those units, from criminal appeals to consumer protection, and do a very stringent process in that regard, not just on personnel, but the structure of the office as well.
I am generally familiar with the National Association of Attorneys General and have a very high regard for them as a trade association, if you want to call them that, but an organization of elected officials. They seem to have a reputation for doing a much better, more quality job than many similar type organizations. I'm pleased that you've hooked up with them to do this review.
Well, we had an orientation about a week after the election, where I went to Florida for all the new AGs that were elected, got a chance to meet General Cooper from North Carolina, but we're actually bringing in to our office representatives from Virginia, Ken Cuccinelli's office, from Colorado, General Suthers, and then also General Cooper from North Carolina, two Republicans and one Democrat, to bring their expertise of their staff, executive staff, to look at our structure and give us a good feedback on how we're doing and what we can do better. That's very important, I think, in light of what we see going on at the legislature at this time. We're doing that unilaterally, and it's almost like a self-audit, if you will, to determine our mission and how well we're performing.
How do you think the staffing will ultimately shake out? I'm not talking about what persons, what individuals, but from a number standpoint. When you took office, there were about 70, 75 lawyers probably on staff under Attorney General Edmondson. Would you imagine it remained about the same?
Well, it depends. It depends on the decisions that are made at the legislature this year. As you know, there's been a lot of discussion about outside counsel being used by respective agencies across state government. There was roughly $10 million or so spent by agencies last year retaining outside counsel. I think as they look at that and the mission of the AG's office, a very fundamental question is going to be asked. What could the AG be doing that they're not doing? And how do we make sure that office is well equipped and well staffed in order to perform some of the roles that are being performed by outside counsel right now? So it depends on what the legislature does on various issues. Now, that is not, the consolidation issue from last year. General counsel and these respective agencies. This is strictly, the attorneys that are being retained in litigation through the agencies.
When you have an assistant attorney general that is assigned to a state agency almost full-time, is there most of the time, how does that assistant attorney general coordinate with you and your office and your staff to make sure they're doing what it is? I mean, they're your employee, but they're working for a state agency.
They are, and that's actually a rarity. I mean, we have some folks that are on site at a couple, 2 or 3 agencies that are there full time. We have people in the office that are actually housed at the AG's office that serve those agencies 100% of the time. Gay Tudor is the head of our general counsel unit, and she does an outstanding job at making sure that those folks are managed, and the mission of the general counsel role is performed adequately for those agencies. When they're on site, I think a lot of times it's because of where they're located. Other travel issues that are associated with that. Most of those folks are in-house at the AG's office, however.
how many cases are ongoing with the Attorney General's office? And as you transition from one staff to another, you have cases that don't just stop and then start over. How do you handle that aspect?
Well, that's why the transition is so important, and very thankful again to the previous administration, because you're right. Litigation that was started last year or 2 years ago, 3 years ago, obviously is still in the process, and we're responsible for taking over that litigation at this point. And I think, there's probably 500 to 600 cases, Mayor, that we currently have in the litigation side, and we just those assistant attorneys. 500 or 600. 500 to 600, which
My goodness.
Really probably is not as many as you think. I know it sounds like a lot, but in fact, one of the interesting things about the role and the job that I'm performing now, I wake up each day and ask our staff who sued us today. So 500 to 600 may sound like a lot, but it's probably not a lot in the scheme of things.
How many of them are criminal as opposed to civil?
That's a good question. I mean, most of the criminal that we have obviously flow out of two areas. One is the multi-county grand jury. The other is the criminal appeals on habeas and whatnot. I think we have about 70 to 75 currently death penalty cases in our criminal appeals unit. And that's a big area of concern. As I mentioned to you guys off air, the very first day on the job, the Tuesday after swearing in, I went to an execution in McAllister and witnessed the execution and realized real quickly the sobering aspects of what we do day to day.
What did you learn that day?
I spent time with the victims' families, prayed with them. We have a victim services unit in our office that does an outstanding job, led by Susan Krug. That's a very important role that we perform as AG. People see us as the chief law enforcement officer, and obviously we're very intent on the death penalty side, but to have that component, that compassionate component of walking with the victims of crime to help them deal with something as dramatic and traumatic as an execution is very important. So I spent time with the families there in McAllister and then witnessed the actual execution. And it was something that was important, I think, as an office, because we see changes being made in death penalty right now with the pentobarbital that we're using as a substitute drug. As you know, there's been a shortage on the other drug that's caused there to be a delay in execution. So we got a chance to see that firsthand and see if it worked as the other one did, and it did.
The crime had been committed in what year?
17 years ago, and that's
fairly typical, isn't it?
Well, it's tragic, really,
yeah,
and it is typical, and it's tragic because the week before the swearing in, we had an execution, 16 years for that one, and 17 years for the one on the 11th of January. One of the things we're looking at in our office is a way to expedite the habeas process in the federal courts. That's where the delays occur. Our state courts do a pretty good job of handling the appeal process, but then when the challenges are made under the federal Constitution and they get into the federal court system from district courts to the appellate courts, that's where the time, 6 to 7 years, generally as a minimum, and longer in these two cases. We're looking at ways that we can actually influence with Department of Justice as a state, ways to expedite that habeas process right now with the criminal appeals unit.
All right. Scott Pruitt is our guest. He's the Attorney General of the state of Oklahoma. More with Scott right after this.
The thing that has made the most sense for me is realizing that I am still an educator, and that is what I do at the Chickasaw Nation. I'm Dr. Amanda Cobb-Greetham. I'm a historian, and I'm Chickasaw. The Chickasaw Cultural Center is amazing. It is a very, very special place devoted to the sharing and to the celebration of Chickasaw history and culture. State-of-the-art technology, exhibits that are not like anything I've ever seen. The Spirit Forest is incredible, and you feel as if you have actually just walked into a forest with huge trees all around you. It's timeless, and yet it's sort of also representative of our time depth, to really just sort of reach through time and touch the past. By the end of the exhibits, you really have a sense of Chickasaw cultural and political resurgence and the extent to which we are a healthy, dynamic, and vital tribe today. Chickasaws have always been an inclusive people. This is something for the whole community and for the state of Oklahoma.
Every time our country imports energy, we're saying we've lost confidence in our own.
But Oklahomans know, under the land of the free lies the energy to be brave.
Advanced technology has led to vast discoveries of oil and natural gas that have doubled America's supply estimates.
Using one well to do the work of 10 in half the time, we're proving that America's best answers will always come from inside our borders.
Oklahoma's oil and natural gas industry, advancing our state, empowering our nation.
When you have something important to communicate, it becomes clear that there's a lot of competition for your audience's attention. So how can your message stand out and actually resonate with your audience? Legal Graphics has the answers. The team at Legal Graphics will work with you to plan, design, and even test your presentation to ensure your message will be heard and remembered. Call Legal Graphics today to schedule an appointment. The readiness is all.
And welcome back to the set of the verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers and our guest, Attorney General Scott Pruitt.
Scott, when you were on with us before, well, you were a candidate, you said one of the first things you do is institute an action on behalf of the state of Oklahoma to try to set aside all or part of the health care program that Congress passed last year. You have kept that promise. You have filed the action. Can you tell our viewers about that?
Yes, big decision, and obviously what we see going on across the country right now, we now have 26 states in Florida that have joined together to sue and challenge the Federal Health Care Act. Virginia filed separately. We were the 28th state to enter and engage on that issue. And the question for me and for our state was how to engage and how to challenge. And the two big questions, frankly, were to join Florida versus filing separately here in Oklahoma. And I'll just be transparent. If it were all about politics, I would have checked the box and joined Florida. That would have been the easiest thing to do. They're postured for a decision right now. In fact, we anticipate that very quickly. I think the decision will be very similar, if not identical, to Florida, where the individual mandate will be stricken there. But there was a big difference between the Florida litigation and what we have here. And the big difference is 4 of the 26 states in Florida that joined together have what we have here in Oklahoma, which is either a state statute or a state constitutional amendment where the state citizens, the state as a whole, has said you can't force us to buy health care. As you know, State Question 756 did that on November 2nd here in Oklahoma. And that's a big, from a legal perspective, as you know, Kent, that's a big issue because it gives the state direct standing to challenge the federal health care law. And again, only 4 states had that in the multi-state litigation in Florida. Our law, our Constitution, and the federal health care law cannot coexist. And so there was a challenge and an opportunity for us as a state to join directly in that challenge, which is what we ended up doing, filing in the Eastern District of Muskogee. Brings another circuit into the mix with the 10th Circuit. You now have the 11th in Florida and the 4th involving Virginia. Now the 10th will be involved. And from a constitutional perspective, it's always good to get multiple circuits involved in analyzing constitutional issues. The Supreme Court looks at that as they make decisions.
Right.
They learn from each of the respective circuits. And our 10th Circuit is probably better than the 4th. Maybe as good as the 11th. We'll see from a conservative standpoint, and we felt like it was important to bring the standing on behalf of our citizens, to challenge it directly in Oklahoma. Frankly, an Oklahoma judge ought to be looking at the Oklahoma law and Oklahoma Constitution, not a Florida judge. And so I chose to bring it here in Oklahoma, and that journey has begun, and we filed, I think, less than 2 weeks after the swearing in.
Where is that headed? So what would the timetable be from this point on?
Well, the timing is pretty, it is an expedited review in the sense that this is not your normal trial. This is not me calling Kent and you, Mayor, and taking testimony through deposition. It's truly a briefing and a focus on legal issues. I anticipate a dispositive motion either by the state, Oklahoma, or the federal government in the proceeding in Oklahoma. And there'll be a briefing schedule set up probably in the 3 to 4 month time frame. And we'll see that happen sometime, I would imagine, this year, as far as a ruling on the district court level. You never know. It's the judge's prerogative and his docket that drive it. And Judge White was assigned the case there in the Eastern District, Muskogee.
How much time is there before the bulk of the federal changes were going to take place or are going to take place?
Well, you know, that's a great question because the individual mandate actually does not take effect until 2014. And it's been a key aspect of the litigation, both in Virginia and Florida, because the feds have responded by saying that perhaps the ripeness of challenging the individual mandate is not there. You know, it's not taking effect. The problem with that position by the federal government is it is the key, the core, the funding mechanism of everything that's going on with the federal health care law. The pre-existing condition changes, you know, the regulatory changes that were made in the act are taking effect now, this year. And the reason they're taking effect, and states are actually in the process of setting up these healthcare exchanges in anticipation of what? The individual mandate going into effect in 2014. So it is so integrated. You know, the individual mandate is the funding mechanism, the regulatory changes are all so intertwined in the legislation that though they don't take effect, the individual mandate until 2014, we see the effects right now as far as insurance companies making changes as we speak.
Well, Is our challenge to the entire bill or just to the individual mandate?
In the entire bill. And we saw Virginia win on the individual mandate. However, the judge severed the unconstitutional portion out, the individual mandate, and kept intact the rest of the legislation. Florida is challenging the entirety of it to try to keep the judge from saying strike the whole thing down. We will as well. And I think it's very important to have another bite at the apple, if you will, to give a judge in Oklahoma the opportunity to say if the individual mandate's unconstitutional, the whole house of cards falls. The whole thing should fall, and Congress should start over on health care law.
Let's step back a moment. If we were to put ourselves in the administration's shoes and they see all this taking place and they see all these conflicts between state law and federal law, what are they likely to do? I mean, I suspect that they are liable to take some action, even if it's just from a public relations standpoint.
And you see that a little bit already. In fact, we were notified by Senator Coburn's office late last week that the Senate Judiciary Committee is actually going to take up the individual mandate issue. Obviously, the Congress already has.
Remind me, the individual mandate
The individual
issue?
mandate is a legal, is a component, it's a coercion clause that says that you must buy health insurance. Okay. And that's what really is at the heart of our challenge. We didn't challenge the Medicaid or the healthcare exchanges or the commandeering of our system. We challenged one thing, the individual mandate, that the federal government doesn't have the power to require Kent and you, Mayor, and me to buy health insurance under the Commerce Clause. That was the action in Virginia. That's part of the action in Florida. They had a few more claims other than that. That's the heart of ours and an isolated portion of our lawsuit here in Oklahoma. Because of that, Mayor, I think you see I think there's some momentum. Florida, I think, will rule as Virginia did on the individual mandate. I think the feds see that their legal strategy is weakening from a Commerce Clause standpoint, and I think politically, even beyond that, you see those 12 U.S. senators that are up in 2012 concerned about what they just saw.
Right.
And for that reason, I think Congress, and particularly the U.S. Senate in this regard, is re-looking, I hope, reanalyzing, do we have the power to really force you to buy something, to take money out of your pocket and tell you to buy a product or service?
Did Congress and the President, were they judging that the American people would be so behind this measure that would force public sentiment to have this be enacted, or was it just something they wanted to get done to show progress in that area?
I think looking back on the debate at that time, one, they had the numbers and they knew that they could do something as controversial as this. They could pass it, and I think it was by sheer force and sheer majority that they did. But secondly, the changes that they wanted to make from a regulatory standpoint, they didn't want to adopt changes at the state level. They wanted to have a command and control approach from Washington. And to have those regulatory changes made, Mayor, they had to have a funding mechanism. They couldn't say to the insurance companies, you're going to buy all pre-existing conditions. They had to bring 16 million new consumers to the market for that insurance company to override the cost that those insurance companies were going to incur as a result of the regulatory environment, or the changes in the bill. So it was a whole package, an integrated package, and they had the numbers to get it done. I think looking back, they realized the people across the country are very concerned about that kind of power being invested in the federal government to say under the Commerce Clause. I mean, think about it for a second. What limitations exist on the Commerce Clause if they have the authority to say to all of us at this table that they can force you to buy health insurance or any other product or service? I don't see any limitations. In fact, it's the equivalent of a general police power, which the feds don't have under the Constitution. So it's a very important issue constitutionally under the Commerce Clause. I think they see momentum with the states. I think they're responding politically, and I think they're responding in the court process to try to find new ways to defend it.
We're going to have to make that the final word. Attorney General Scott Pruitt, thanks for coming on The Verdict.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks again.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Kent and I'll have a final word when we get back.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
The good life comes naturally to Tulsa, where nature's beauty is matched with an eye for aesthetics. A legacy of neighborhoods graced with lawns and landscaping and handsome homes. A place that seems to have patented an ideal lifestyle. Bank First is loyal to the quality of life Tulsa assures its citizens, to the priority placed on education, culture, and growth. Loyal to builders who transform raw land into residential charm. Developers who see opportunity and add vitality to Tulsa's economy. Bank First serves both enterprise and private lives that need a loyal partner. It's how we help nurture this city's very good life. Bank First. Loyal to Oklahoma. Loyal to you.
In Oklahoma, we enjoy a high quality of life due to good, well-paying jobs. Commercial real estate professionals play a significant role in bringing new businesses and investment to Oklahoma. The commercial real estate community has come together to market Oklahoma's commercial properties nationwide through a free public website, okcommercialproperty.com. We are invested in keeping Oklahoma strong and growing because economic development ensures quality of life.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information. And for almost 30 years, Oklahoma political, government, and business leaders have turned to the McCarville Report for accurate, reliable, inside information. Visit the McCarville Report online.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett and Kent Myers. We're wrapping up the show with the new Attorney General, Scott Pruitt.
Well, he's got a lot going on. He's got a lot on his plate and a lot to do, but he's got a lot of enthusiasm and vigor, and I think we'll see an awful lot of action out of his office.
Well, he's got a lot immediately to deal
Yes.
with. I mean,
Yes.
you know, he's got all these, we'd say 500, 600 cases that are in some level of completion, and then he's got the high-profile case of taking on health care.
Well, and he's got to review his staffing because with 50 to 70 lawyers, some of whom will stay, I guess, and some of whom may not, he's got to fill staffing holes so that he doesn't drop the ball in any of those cases.
Well, he's very busy, and we appreciate his time coming on.
Yeah,
The
he's
Verdict.
always very generous with his time.
Yeah, Scott Pruitt. And I want to give you a couple of websites that you can go to for more information. First, to get more information on the Attorney General's office, you can go to their website at oag.state.ok.us, or you can go to our website and tell us about a show you'd like to see right here on The Verdict, theverdict.tv. For Kent, I'm Mick. We'll see you next week.
The preceding program was produced exclusively for the Cox Channel.